We're live and we're now recording.
Thanks, Katie. Can we go ahead and have roll call?
Yes. Mr. Antonio,
Here.
Mr. Badger,
Here.
Mr. Bleefeld,
I'm here.
Miss Chiavacci,
Here.
Mr. Frank,
Here.
Mrs. Heyman,
Here.
Miss Karianakis,
Here.
Dr. Morris,
Here.
Mrs. Ginsburg,
Here.
Lauren Kuhlman,
Here.
Alex Gandaya,
Here.
Sachi Mehta, I think she's here. So we have 9 present, 0 absent, and 3 student board reps this evening.
Great. Thanks so much, Katie. All right, if everybody will please join me now with the Pledge of Allegiance. I'd like to welcome everyone to our December 13th, 2021 meeting of the Hicken School Board. I would like to remind members of the community attending this evening that unless you've requested and obtained a medical exemption in advance of this meeting this evening, that masks are required when you are here in the boardroom with us or in the building. Going through our agenda, the next item, prior meetings, we just met last week. We had a reorganization and work session public meeting. Number 3 on our agenda lists our upcoming meetings. We do have a policy committee meeting coming up this Wednesday. And then on the 20th, we have a racial equity oversight committee meeting, as well as the North Monco joint operation meeting. Next, we have some presentations. We have our Hicken High School monthly highlights. Alex?
Thank you. Yeah, in the past month, we've had some pretty exciting things going on at the high school. And just to start off, the WHS drama students performed in the 2021 fall drama, The Crucible, and they all did a great job. They're all very talented and they're just an amazing performance. Also, for the girls, WHS girls soccer team landed 6th seeded in the 2014 field for District 1 playoffs, and they had a record of 14-3. So great job to them. And then also for the girls water polo team, they finished 5th in the state tournament this season. So also kudos to them.
Great, thank you so much. Do any of our other student reps want to share anything?
Yeah, I have more things to add. So some more highlights were that Hicken included the Culture Exploration Festival, which was this past Saturday, and the 4 World Language National Honor Society hosted this event at the high school to introduce food, games, and more to the students and the parents. And additionally, the Key Club collected over 105 pajamas and coats to donate for Maddie Dixon. And then lastly, the SAD Club, Students Against Destructive Decisions, participated in a mindfulness morning with the Mindfulness Club and led participants through breathing and meditation exercise before the school day.
Great, thank you so much. Any other reps present that want to share anything? No? All right, well, thank you so much for those updates, both of you. All right, next we will have a report from our WEOF student representative. Lauren, are you on?
Yep.
Great.
So WEOF has held a few very exciting events in the recent past and already has a couple more lined up for the near future. To start off, WEOF recently held its Giving Tuesday campaign, in which we raised over $2,200. The money raised in this event will go directly back to Wissahickon schools and classrooms through grants that will be sponsored by WEOF. We would like to give a humongous thank you to all of the Wissahickon family members who donated and also all of the board members who donated. Currently, WEOF is holding our annual staff tribute event in which Wissahickon families can purchase a staff tribute that will go directly to one of our Wissahickon faculty members of their choice. Whoever chooses to participate will pay $15 and will get to write a small note of thanks to the faculty member of their choosing, and the note along with a small gift will be delivered to the faculty member just before winter break. The event will run for 1 week, and we're hoping that it will be even more successful than last year's staff tributes, which raised over $5,000. Finally, WEOF has set a date and a location for our annual trivia night. This coming year, it will be Saturday, May 7th at the Center Square Fire Company. And we ask that everyone would save the date for this event, and we will have prices and more details coming out shortly. We have a few more events in the works, but these are the few events that we are particularly excited about.
Great. Thank you so much for that update. Do any of our board members have any questions for any of our student board reps?
I just wanted to comment, Lauren, I'm excited to hear about the return of the WEOF Trivia Night. I've been a frequent participant and I missed that event the past couple of years, well, at least the in-person version. So looking forward to finding out more about that. Thank you.
Anyone else have any comments or questions for any of our student reps? No? Well, thank you so much again to all of you. All right, next we will have our budget introduction presentation.
Thank you very much. Katie is calling up the presentation, and this is the annual meeting. It's almost always December, where what we do is we look back at the results of the prior year, and then we look forward to the budget that's going to be coming up next year. So we'll talk about some of the challenges and opportunities as well. Going for you. So I'll just, if you can move that forward, if not, it's still okay. So generally, the purpose of tonight's meeting is to do what we talked about. And then in tonight's meeting, we're going to be making a decision about staying within the Act 1 index. At the finance meeting, then as discussed the work session, it's a little bit easier this year than normally. Normally, there's a decision based on the fact that we do meet the criteria for exceptions. This year, the draft is that we do not. So our recommendation is to vote upon the motion that is presented in the board report, which would allow the district to stay within the Act 1 index and then have a tax increase that would be between 0 and 3.4%. The pieces after that, we would go back to all the administrative budget makers, and they will prepare their individual pieces. We'll have additional meetings about enrollment capacity and staffing, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And then we have to make assumptions about certain things that we don't know, including PSERS, medical, et cetera. We will present a consolidated budget to the board, and then we'll discuss possible efficiencies and new initiatives with the board as well. And all that, hopefully, we're going to contain that to the conversations over various meetings and then conclude that in May or June. The results for the last year's audit were very, very successful. So what we're presenting here, the 2-year retrospective look, as you can see, our revenues and expenses are all within a general $106 to $112 million range. And 2 years ago, we had a loss of about $500,000. And this year we had an overall increase to fund balance of $1.7 million. Some of the drivers of the increase in revenue, we did have a very, very significant property called Arborcrest sell for $200-some million. It's a non-recurring item. We can't bank on it every year, but that individual item added about $1 million to real estate transfer taxes. And then another effect of COVID is that people working from home didn't work in the city, and our earned income tax was very, very strong as well. So that, along with another 100 items, made up the positive nature of the $1.7 million for last year's audit. Just a quick slide discussing where revenue comes from. In different schools across Pennsylvania, the local revenue percentage would be very small and the state revenue would be very large. With Hicken, it's really just the opposite. So we're 78% local, 18% state, and very, very small amount of federal and other. So this just shows the overall context of what our expenses are, and the big blue and the big red sections are between the two of them. I'm going to keep here about 80% of our overall expenditure budget, and that's salary and benefits, which isn't surprising. We're a service organization that's teachers, special education teachers, all the other various K through 12 teachers that we have, guidance counselors, et cetera, nursing, and all the other things. So we are all about salaries and benefits, and that's what are the predominant movers and shakers of our budget every year, including this year. The assessed valuation for the entire district has increased. It's a very, very, very flat line, but it is increasing. And any increase that we have here allows us to somewhat offset whatever tax increases that we need. So over this time frame, it has increased, and you can see the relative values of Whitpain, Lower Gwynedd, and Ambler, obviously Whitpain being the largest. Challenges and opportunities. PSERS is less of a conversation in terms of change, but clearly an incredibly important part in terms of overall dollars. So for every dollar that we have, there's 35 cents being spent on PSERS. So that is an incredible amount. As we saw a couple slides ago, salaries are an incredible amount of our money, and PSERS and medical are probably our second and third biggest pieces. And we had talked about this a little bit at the finance meeting. And this is a chart, and it's truly a guess. But at one point in time, PSERS put out a chart talking about when it is that they believed that PSERS would start coming down. So they haven't updated that chart. So now we're just sort of making it up and continuing to update the intermediate green bullets. But the red ones we continue to put on here because at some point in time, there is going to become an excess of PSERS dollars compared to what is needed. And at that point in time, it's my belief that there will be a reduction in PSERS. So there is some opportunity out there in the future. Another challenge that we have is, and an opportunity to a certain extent, Stony Creek is very, very happily going to have a grand opening tomorrow, which hopefully many of us will be able to attend. So at that point, we'll be adding 7 classrooms from a capacity standpoint. But our elementary, overall elementary capacity, as Dr. Chrisfield walked through at the last facilities meeting, is still very, very, very high compared to the overall elementary population. So we do have a tiny bit of capacity, but it's very small compared to the overall percentage of classrooms that we have available, even with Stony Creek coming on board. The other thing that we just need to keep in mind, and the board has been incredibly supportive and proactive, when we transfer money into capital projects, we very quickly then accomplish a project, whether it's HVAC or roofing or various other projects. And that is needed because of, as noted there, our buildings are very, very old with the exception of Lower Gwynedd, which at this point certainly isn't young. The average building age is over 50 years old. They're very, very solid and good buildings, but clearly, just like with your house, the older they get, the more attention that they need. Again, we're very, very fortunate from the standpoint that in Wissahickon, our average tax rate for Wissahickon is the second lowest in Montgomery County. So we're at 21.72 there. Upper Marion, which is the district to our right, and the chart is 20.76. And there's a fair amount of gap between us and the district to our left, which is at 24. So I think we're going to remain at second lowest for the foreseeable future. And obviously, it's a very, very positive place to be, considering that our educational product is among the top 2 or 3 in the county and most of the metrics. Some, obviously, we're even the highest. So we're very fortunate to have an incredibly good educational product at the top of the scale, and then our taxes are very, very comparatively low. The timeline, as I discussed at the beginning, is that tonight we'll take an action for the 3.4% Act 1, so that the resolution is, if it passes, it we'll have a tax increase of between 0 and 3.4% between now and either May or June when the budget is adopted. And again, top side, we're very fortunate, second lowest tax increase or tax rate in the county, AAA bond rating, among the lowest tax burdens in the state, and we have approximately $18 million in capital reserve. A lot of the thanks for that goes to this board and prior boards in continuing to have long-range goals whenever we deliberate and make action. Are there any questions?
Wade, I have it's less of a question and more of a comment. The slide where you had the bar chart showing the tax burden across all of the districts. That's a slide that I think doesn't get enough play because I think we as a board have been criticized, in particular over the last few years, about having tax increases for the last several years in a row. And I think an important context to keep in mind is that chart exactly, is that in spite of tax increases, which we felt were necessary to continue to invest in the quality of education in Wissahickon, as well as provide us financial flexibility to deal with facilities and infrastructure, capital improvements that we know we had to address in the next few years. In spite of that, we are still among the lowest and very neck and neck with the lowest tax burden in all of Montgomery County. So, I mean, I think that's something that we as board members need to keep in mind and just reflect on and think about when we think about the budget. And as we hear maybe feedback, let's say, from the community and other folks, is to keep that broader perspective in mind as well.
Yep, thank you for the accent to the comments. That is a cumulative number, meaning that we have been second lowest for a long period of time, and I imagine we're going to be second lowest for quite a few years into the future, regardless of the individual yearly tax increases.
Any other questions or comments for Wade? Well, thank you so much, Wade.
Thank you very much.
And before we move into our first public comment period, I just want to remind members of our community that you need to put your masks on if they're not on currently. Sir, could you put your mask on? Thank you. Thank you. All right, so we will begin our first public comment period. Typically, we allow 5 speakers on the same topic. Because we anticipate a number of comments this evening, we will allow 30 minutes of comments this evening total for public comment. You do have 3 minutes to speak, and we will stop you at that 3-minute mark since we do have a number of people that are speaking this evening. It is our board's practice not to engage in dialogue with speakers, but we typically do respond to questions on our website a few days later, if appropriate. All right. So our first public comment this evening is from Carmina Taylor. Carmina, if you could come up. And when giving your public comment, please state your name, address, and municipality of residence, as well as the agenda topic you'll be speaking on.
Good evening. So my first public, Carmina Taylor, I'm an alum and community advocate. I just wanted to point out that as you approved policy 302 tonight, the description of the superintendent's title or subtitle is the community's preeminent educational leader. And I think that's a pretty heavy description. And I just want you guys to be aware that that really means that that person surpasses others and is very distinguished in some way. And when I think about a preeminent educational leader, I think of an inclusive leader. And I just want you to be aware that that's the standard as a board that you are setting for now and in the future. And so the community deserves a preeminent educational leader, and the outcome should reflect that. So I just wanted to point that out. My second comment is related to document 14-1. Prior to seeing it today, I wanted to know how much the expenses were from the ESSER funds. But as I look at the job description, or not the description of the after-school reading program, I do not see any notation of follow-up during the 12-week program that incorporates the families, the parents of the students in the reading program. All national studies say that a reading program is exceptionally effective when you include the parents. So maybe, Dr. Dewan, you might want to think about that in terms of the 12-week program. It looks like it's all salary-based, but there either should be a partnership with community organizations where the kids live, or after-school programs of the volunteers that do that, but certainly the parents. So I got my answer on the money because I know that some of the ESSER fund notation that came out showed about 90% of the money being used is for salaries of teachers. So is that, are those teachers current teachers or those special teachers on assignment? Because again, that makes a difference in connecting with the families of the students that you're helping. So I'll follow up this first part of the public comment with my questions in an email, or maybe I'll direct it to you, Dr. Dewan. Thank you.
Thank you, Carmina. Katie, do we have any registered speakers online?
We have one registered, Alexis Wasserman.
Great. Alexis, if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself, you can go ahead and speak.
Yes, hello. My name is Alexis Wasserman, and I am a resident of Whitpain Township. I am speaking on the topic of the health and safety plan. I am a firm advocate of COVID safety in our schools, and I've previously promoted the position that we should follow CDC recommendations for practices to follow in our schools. At the current time, the CDC recommendations updated November 5th, 2021 include universal indoor masking in K-12 schools, regardless of vaccination status. I note that the recommended health and safety plan follows guidelines from the Montgomery County Office of Public Health. However, it diverges from CDC recommendations in that it allows for optional masking if local transmission is low or moderate. This does represent a compromised position where masks can be removed once the risks are lower, but requires them at a time like now with a surge in cases. To me, this seems to be a reasonable approach which allows for an appropriate level of risk in a population which does have the ability to be vaccinated. Now, I know for many in our community, this is a disappointing proposal, as they wish to make masks optional in schools as soon as possible. To those community members, I would like to point out that this plan does give a level of control back to the people, as it is based on case numbers within our small district. Our school district population is around 40,000 residents, and the student population is around 5,000. I'd estimate the population of the families that include students is on the order of approximately 10,000 individuals. If our community truly wanted to unmask our students, we certainly together have the collective strength to work with our neighbors to lower the case rates within our borders. And we can do so via proven means of reducing transmission, such as wearing masks in public spaces, getting vaccinated, and avoiding higher risk activities. In conclusion, the proposed health and safety plan represents a compromised position, which is a reasonable risk-based approach, which uses local data that we as community members can influence to determine the requirement for masking in our schools. I therefore strongly encourage you to vote to approve the plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexis. Okay, our next registered speaker is Maureen Bogut.
Hi, I'm Maureen Bogut. I'm Whitpain Township. I'm speaking on the health and safety plan and the arts program, which I'm afraid has been decimated in our district. I asked you to reject the current health plan proposed by Dr. Crisfield and to review and develop a protocol that is in line with the Pennsylvania Supreme Court ruling this past weekend, which has made the mask mandate null and void, and thus more in the parents' hands. Masking per the court was considered a modified quarantine, and I could also say it was also a medical device, and treatment as such can only be applied, especially by the health secretary, to a sick population. Rightly so, Allison Beam's mask mandate was struck down and determined to be null and void as she indiscriminately and unilaterally, without legislative process, applied what I call a medical treatment to an entire state of healthy children. a population of healthy children. It has left the decision now to the schools, which may not be a fair thing to do. If a health secretary cannot mandate how you as educators, how can you as educators in schools mandate this? And I extend this to the Montgomery Health Department. They similarly cannot mandate. And indeed, they are not mandating. They have never done that. They have a framework and school guidelines in place that are recommendations. They are not mandates. So even though it is in the district's hands to make a decision on a health and safety plan, I say to you, because if the health secretary can't do it, how can you as educators do it? How can the local school board have that ability to apply a quarantine, as the courts call it, to healthy children? The reason it was struck down by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court was because they were trying to base it upon a ruling that would only apply to sick people, sick children. And there was no end in sight for the actual masking. So I ask you, and I remind you, this summer, before the mask mandate came down, it was approved by you for the 6th to 12th grade to have masks be optional. It was approved, the community was happy, and then the mask mandate came and we complied. Now, the understanding was we were going to do that because vaccinations were available for that group of people. Now they are available for all the children. So the implied intent was for us to then go mask optional. At least that's what we thought, hopefully come January. We had talked about this. So I ask you to revert back to that prior approved plan. This was acceptable to you in the summer. This is 2 years now. I also talked to you about the arts program. I feel that since there are no capacity limits anywhere else, we need to lift the capacity limits for our children. They're not happy with this. Performing to 50 people is not what they signed up for. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ronnie. Katie, do we have any more registered speakers online?
Yes, Jen R.
Great. Jen R., you can go ahead and unmute yourself. Jen R., are you there? Okay, we can come back maybe to Jen R.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, sorry, I had a little phone trouble. It's Jen Rappaport. I'm in Lower Gwinnett Township. I'm calling also about the masking business, just with the Supreme Court ruling the other day, and with the approved health and safety plan that we did have in the summer. Our 7th to 12th graders, they were all explained to, look, guys, you're going back to school with this new plan here. You're not going to have to be required to wear masks. They're going to be optional. Some kids will, some kids won't. And that was all taken away. You were all fine with it. Everybody was fine with it. It was approved. The only thing that changed it was it looks like we had a mandate put in place by the state. And now that mandate is null and void. So I don't know what everybody's still doing. I don't know why 7 to 12 is still required to do this now. The thing that was stated to us before is we need all kids to have the opportunity to get a vaccine. Once we get a vaccine, we can move forward. Well, guess what? We're there. We have the vaccine. All the kids can get the vaccine. You have moved the post again. You keep on moving and changing the rules. Every time we get to a level of acceptance, which is approved by you and accepted by you, you change the rules again and make us jump through more hoops. We need the plan revisited. We need some modifications made, and we're willing to take action. Otherwise, if this doesn't happen in a reasonable way, we need something done and we need it done quickly. I'm not going to need the full 3 minutes. You basically get my point. That's about all I have to say. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Jen. Okay, our next public speaker is Puneet Kushik. I'm sorry.
My name is Puneet Kaushik, Bluebell Township or Bluebell Country Club, Pennsylvania. The lady that first spoke, she talks a lot about CDC and case numbers, et cetera, but she ended up leaving out some very critical piece of evidence and some very basic common sense. So let me present these facts to you. Fact, COVID presents no significant risk to children. In the United States, over 4.2 million kids have contracted COVID. Of those, only 0.008% have died from it. Less than 0.0004% of this country's child population has died of COVID. More than twice that number die of drowning in a bathtub. Yet no one here is going to propose that we put our kids in life preservers when we give them a bath, because that would be insane and stupid. Very similar to how these masking mandates have been in this school district. Moreover, I came here to celebrate the Supreme Court striking down the illegal mask mandates that have been put in place. I am so happy. I am hoping that the school board is going to follow suit, but we both know that's not going to be the case. However, I did want to go ahead and point out one more thing. Asking kids to wear a mask for a disease which poses no risk to them is akin to child abuse. Asking your child to go ahead and wear a football helmet because you're afraid of coconuts falling out of the sky is, again, insane. No one should be doing this. At the very least, people are very open to options. Provide people with the option. If you want to go ahead and have your child mask up, please do so. Do not force this insanity on people that want nothing to do with it. People insanely quote about the CDC guidelines, masking guidelines. The CDC also has a guideline about BMI, body mass index, which basically says, you know what, you need to be within a certain amount of specified weight limits according to your height and weight criteria, because that has more of an impact on your health and well-being than any mask does. So once again, I do know that these mask guidelines are not to keep the kids safe. They are safe. They are safe by any statistic, by any data point, by any medical journal, by any study that has been conducted. They are overwhelmingly safe. The adults can be safe too. You can go ahead and get vaccinated. No one stops you from doing that. So moreover, this masking policy is not a safety blanket for the kids. This is a political security blanket for you, the board, if you don't vote to go ahead and get rid of the security mask mandate today. So at the end of the day, this is not about safety. This is all about politics and power. And I implore you, for the sake of this community, to step away from that, to go ahead, strike down the mask mandate in the school, allow people the opportunity to go ahead and make up their own mind and figure out what is right for their kids. Do not impose this illegally on them. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. And I just want to remind everybody in the audience again to keep your masks up over your nose and mouth, please, especially when speaking. Katie, do we have any other registered speakers online?
Yes, Liz Weir.
Okay, great. Liz, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that I would like to see us lose this mandate for a variety of reasons. I think it's time for this to go optional. I think the state Supreme Court has spoken. And my biggest concern right now is the climate that this policy has created within the schools, especially how some of the teachers have been approaching it. We have teachers who most have been wonderful. Most have been very understanding. They have provided breaks for the kids. They understand that it's uncomfortable, but there are some who have been, for lack of a better word, just bullies. I have one child who was actually grabbed by a teacher in middle school who, because he didn't have his mask over his nose. This is something that this policy has created an environment where some teachers have taken it on themselves to just become mask bullies. And these kids have enough going on. They don't need this. They don't need this complete ridiculous pressure for a policy that is not saving them. It is just mask theater at this point, but we cannot keep this up. The kids need a break. Give the kids a break and stop with the masks. Let it be optional. And moreover, this has to stop with what the teachers are doing. We have wonderful teachers in this district. There are a handful, who are taking it to the extreme. And that has to stop. And this policy is exacerbating that. It has to go optional. We have to give these kids a break.
Thank you for your comments. All right, next we have Laurie Green.
Good evening. My name is Laurie Green and I live in Whippane Township. I'm also speaking on the proposed health and safety plan. Looking back at COVID case counts from the past 6 months, Hicken School Districts has only had 6 weeks of moderate or low case counts or transmission level. And this took place in the month of July and the end of June in 2021. So we did not have any weeks of low or moderate transmission during this school year. Looking back at the past case spikes in January and April of 2021, I'm not optimistic that the transmission levels will ever reach low or moderate levels for 2 weeks straight during this school year. Last year in June, even with the lowest case counts of the pandemic, there was a refusal by the district to change the masking plan for the end of the school year or for summer school. It is very important to realize that our decisions today can impact the next 6 to 7 months in our school district. I implore the board to have discussion tonight on ways we can scale back the mask mandate. At the very least, we should make a commitment to revisiting the health and safety plan each month at the school board meetings to see if changes can be made to scale back mitigation efforts and returning our schools to normal. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Laurie. All right, do we have any more registered speakers online, Katie?
We have Tara G.
Great. Tara, can you unmute yourself? Tara, are you there? Hi, Katie, maybe we come back to Tara. Who's next? Is there anyone else registered?
No other ones registered on Zoom.
Okay, great. Then we next in person have Keith Siegel.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the board, and I applaud and appreciate your willingness to hear the community. I appreciate the service that you are making. It's nice to see a familiar face, and Ronnie Heyman, my daughter's 5th grade teacher. Dr. Chrisfield, you and I have had an opportunity to go back and forth in many communications about many topics over the years, and certainly having previously served in Melbourne where my brother raises his children. So nice to see you. I too want to acknowledge and just discuss the mask policy. And I want to point out the purpose back in the day. Can you believe we're talking 2020, almost 2 years ago. The masking policy was never about preventing transmission. It was about reducing hospitalizations and deaths. And I want to encourage us to be thinking about and put ourselves in the position of our children who are in school right now. The 5-year-old or 6-year-old in kindergarten who can't see his peer's mouth moving. And by the way, we all read lips when we talk to somebody. And my son, who's a junior, can't perform his musical or his play without wearing a mask. It's untenable in the context of moderation. You've heard several people speak online, certainly here, about a change in policy. What I am really frightful for in our community is a lack of moderation. The pendulum should not swing too far in either direction. And we need to be responsive to the market, to the current conditions. And there's a concept called planned continuation bias, which is a behavioral, economic, and psychological term. Basically, it is, we've made a decision, we're going to stick with the decision, and we're not going to change even with the facts on the ground when they have changed. I'm asking and imploring that we talk through and we think through this masking policy and making it truly optional. If my son wishes to wear a mask in school, he may. If a teacher wishes not to wear a mask in school, he or she may not wear the mask. But to give option back to the family, control back to the family is really important. And again, coming back to the conversation and the community and lowering the temperature about this boiling point, this discussion point, I want to implore that we think and frame it in the context of if we were in elementary school or middle school or high school, what experience would we want? What memories would we want to have of this time? And we as parents in the community, I think, are in a position to advise and guide with facts and data presented by FDA, CDC, among others. I realize this is not an easy topic and agenda for you guys to be considering, but I want to encourage moderation. Let's make it mask optional. Again, I thank you for your time and for your service to the community.
Thank you so much for your comments. Katie, is there anyone else registered online?
No one registered on Zoom.
Okay. Then we'll go to our next in-person, Charlotte Coleman.
Hi, my name is Charlotte and I'm in the 5th grade at Stony Creek Elementary. I wanted to speak tonight because I wanted you to know how it's been wearing a mask at school. Masks make me feel uncomfortable, not just sometimes, all the time. They are itchy, hot, and stuffy. When I feel uncomfortable, it is hard to focus. Sometimes I feel sick and dizzy. Mask breaks aren't enough. When I put it back on, I just feel sick again. It makes me unhappy to not be able to see any of my friends or teacher without a mask on. You can never really see people smile and everyone's voice is always muffled. This is how I feel every day. I wish that school would go back to the way it was. Grown-ups always say that they're enforcing this because it's the policy. I'm asking you to not blame anyone else, but to stand up for kids like me and allow us to go to school mask optional, or at the very least accept exemptions for kids who feel sick in a mask. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Charlotte. That was our last in-person registered speaker. Is there anyone online?
No more speakers on Zoom.
Nope. Okay. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for your comments this evening.
Amy, can I just say real quick?
Yeah.
Charlotte, I just want to commend you on getting up and speaking because that's not easy in front of a room of adults, especially for someone your age. I'm right over here. Sorry. So you did a great job. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you so much, Charlotte, for getting up and speaking this evening. All right. Let's see. Next, we have our board president report. This evening, I have no informational items. Under action items, the first item has been withdrawn. The second item, though, approval to reappoint Ronnie Heyman to the North Monco Technical Career Center Joint Operating Committee for a 3-year term effective December 2021 through December 2024.
So moved.
I'll second.
Thank you. Any comments or questions?
Keep leading the charge, Ronnie.
Is everyone all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, it passes. Congratulations, Ronnie, and thank you for continuing to represent our district along with David. All right, next we have our superintendent's report. Jim?
Thank you. The first item is a huge thank you to the team here in the district for taking all the time to put together the color that they now see along the walls here in this room and also in the hallways. We have some staff members and children who provided the modeling services. As you can see, there's a little bit of hamming going on here, but that's okay. They were either notified this was going to happen or they concurred after the fact. Either way, their pictures are great. The team here who put this together, Kristen Rawlings and Keziah Latour and Jen Morehouse, really deserve a huge thank you because this just reminds us why we're all here doing this and putting all this time into this. So thank you to the team and to all the models. And then we have the one action item that we reviewed last meeting, which is agenda item 7B1. So I'd like please an approval of action item 7B1.
Do we have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Any questions or comments before we vote?
So I have a question about It was brought up that when we voted originally in July, there was a mask optional policy, high school, middle school, that would that no longer be in effect, given that the state mandate is not in effect, Jim?
No, the original health and safety plan was modified by the board on August 23rd, but by a vote.
For everyone?
Correct.
Okay. And that was adopted in spite of the Pennsylvania ruling,
It
essentially,
actually
or in
was
addition
adopted
to.
before that Secretary Beam's ruling was issued.
So when that was made, our transmission rates were very, very low. When that's what that's what the board had discussed in July when transmission rates were low. So now our transmission rates are, for the county, we're about 10%. For the local area, we're about 7-8%, somewhere in that range. That's exception. That's a lot higher. So I just wanted to point that out.
Jim, I just wanted to make sure we're still encouraging our teachers, even though it is getting a bit cooler now, to still do as much outdoor time and give our children mask breaks, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any other comments or questions for Jim?
Jim, just one clarifying question. So this new health and safety plan is for the remainder of this year, or is what's the incremental timing?
The concept is for semester 2, which would be the balance of the year. The requirement is to revisit the health and safety plan every 6 months. It can be done more frequently should a development occur, such as a change in the recommendations upon which it's based.
Jim, I want to also add the nuance that you talk about formally revisiting the health and safety plan, but within the current proposed health and safety plan, there is a mechanism to adapt our approach to masking based on local transmission rates and the percent positive, a few metrics established by the Montgomery County Office of Public Health. So we will formally review the overall health and safety plan every 6 months, but within this next period, it builds in flexibility to adjust and adapt our mask approach based on local metrics.
Any other comments or questions?
I have I guess a question about a point of information, I suppose. One of the items in here is that we will continue to encourage vaccination and partner with pharmacies and the OPH at Monco to provide opportunities. Do we plan any more clinics for the district, or could we?
We don't have any vaccine clinics planned. What we heard from local pharmacies is it's almost easier for them to take appointments and have people go to the pharmacy. One thing we haven't thought of yet, because it isn't enough out yet, but maybe the possibility of a booster situation when that time comes. The students who just got vaccinated won't have that for 6 months or whatever, but when that time comes, we could consider that.
Okay. How many Hicken students were vaccinated with the most recent clinic? Do we know?
The most recent clinic was about 820. And some of them were, most of them were our students. Some were residents of the community who went to private and parochial schools as well. We opened it to them as well as our students.
And a somewhat follow-up to that, I know that the vaccination status of students is an optional one where they can share that information. How's that been going? Have we been getting participation in sharing that information?
Yes, as you note, there's no requirement to share that with us. It's optional, and we have been getting some. We knew of some anyway because in the course of contact tracing, then we find that information out sort of proactively. But yes, I'm encouraged by the number of students who are sharing that information.
Jim, will contact tracing and quarantine be used basically for the rest of the year? Is there a point that Montgomery County says our transmission is low enough that we don't have to quarantine students any longer?
I don't know the answer to that. There could be. We would definitely take any cues about quarantining from the Office of Public Health, and they establish the rules for that.
Jim, can you share the number as far as we know at this point of those vaccinated or percentage of vaccinated within the school district? Both teacher, staff, and student?
The approximate teacher, and Danielle, help me if I get this wrong, is about 90 or so, 85 maybe percent. And we had that because we, as you recall, have been doing testing of non-vaccinated teachers, which by the way is expiring this month. I don't have a good sense of the percent of students, but we'll have that once there's a little more time elapsed and they can choose to report or not.
Okay, any other questions or comments?
Do we have any data on or information from teachers on how they feel about masking policy in general?
We have only anecdotal, and we explored this, and anecdotally there's a split in terms of some teachers very much want it to continue. Some feel like it's time to move forward in a different direction. And so that's part of the reason why there isn't an official statement, because the membership is split.
Have we considered allowing vaccinated teachers when teaching in front of the classroom and they're 6 feet apart to take off their mask? Because I know how hard it is to speak loudly through a mask to a group of children who may be not quiet.
Yeah. We have hesitated to make distinctions between vaccinated and unvaccinated in terms of what happens in the classroom. So I guess the answer to that direct question is no, but we do have some instances, some limited instances where teachers can, or really more like special services providers can remove masks.
Jim, I have a couple of questions regarding the second semester. When it comes to if there are positive cases, can you share with everybody the percentage or the amount either required or determined by the district that will result in either a class being shut down or, God forbid, an entire school? Because when people see the numbers, it doesn't really give them context. So for the second semester, how is that going to, how does that allow them to make a choice based on what we see?
Okay. If a class or a school has to go into virtual mode, that decision is almost exclusively that of the Office of Public Health. It would have to do with whether or not there was in-school transmission. So there is no set number of the number of students who would convert it to a virtual. It would have to do with if the contact tracing resulted in a determination that there was in-school transmission, then there would be a move to virtual for that class or possibly school.
Any other questions or comments?
I just have one more comment. I'm sorry. As a pharmacist, I can't help myself from weighing in on this. I apologize. I did want to make the comment that, I think we're all sick of this pandemic. I feel it, my kids feel it, and I get it. And I read all the emails that I've gotten in the last week, and I took them all to heart. And some people asked me specifically to voice their concerns, and we've heard their concerns voiced in comments. But there's people that want the board and I to vote against the recommendations of the county health department, the CDC, the American Academy of Pediatrics, I guess WHO, Pennsylvania Department of Education. It's hard for me, I want to do what's in the best interest of the kids. And for me, that's them being in school. If we learned anything last year, it's that being at home is no replacement for being in-person school. And so even if we had an option where they could stream their class online, quarantine is not where anyone wants to be. And we've done an excellent job so far of keeping our kids in school. That's where they need to be. And so for me, this vote comes down to, how can we keep the most kids in school? And that's what I just wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Deanne. Anyone else want to share?
Okay, I swear, last one.
Go ahead, Debbie.
So Jim, one of the things that I struggle with is, for the art and music departments, there is quite a bit of restriction there still. And there isn't that same restriction if you're playing basketball or swimming in a swimming pool or doing another athletic event that is optional. So this is one that like hits me really hard because I have an artist that I live with and she cries to me every day. So with this new policy, I don't see anything in here that would change or alter it. It's not very specific. So I do want to understand what our path is moving forward. Are we going to have our kids singing, performing? Like how is that going to be addressed?
I know there's a couple of different ways of looking at that. There's the capacity restrictions that have resulted from distancing. And then there's the requirement for masking. So I think we have potential for the capacity restrictions in certain circumstances. So for example, if the capacity restriction in an event only affects the adults in the audience, say, and it's an optional event, and if people aren't comfortable enough to go, then maybe we can roll back some of those capacity restrictions. They have, or for example, at a basketball game, if the students are going to be a little tighter than 6 feet, but everyone's wearing masks, there's potential there. In the audience for a concert or a theatrical production, there's potential for capacity restrictions being lifted. The reason it's not specifically called out in the health and safety plan is because there are too many instances where we need to be sure that no students are adversely impacted. And I'll give you another example. And we have to decide this pretty quickly, a high school dance coming up. So that's in some sense an optional event. You don't have to go if you don't want to. On the other hand, it's something that is really fun for kids to do. So I would hesitate to put something in the health and safety plan and that would either preclude us from doing that or require us to do something else in that example. So broadly speaking, I think we can have some movement on capacity restrictions. It could be a case by case on things that have to do with masking.
That'll be great, just because I don't know if you have been to the auditorium to watch a performance lately. I mean, it's every 3 seats in every other row. I mean, like that's over the top.
It's like I say,
We need
you're
to
right.
rethink that a little bit.
I think we can fix distancing capacity as long as if it's just spectators, just optional, and as long as they're still masking.
Yeah, thanks. That helps.
Jim, I would like to piggyback on that because I was approached by someone who thought that the spring musical was going to be canceled for some reason, and that was attributed to a decision that we had made. Now, that's not the case. I know we didn't make such a vote or decision. And number two, we wouldn't have made such a decision because you've heard every one of us saying we have got to treat the arts as any other project or co-curricular activity that people are involved in. So when I hear that causes me some concern because I don't want to hear that any kid is denied any program such as a choral concert, a musical, any type of instrument concert. They should be full steam ahead like every other activity. And I want to make sure that we express that not only to the district, but really to all of the members of our community, including the staff, that there should be no reason that we shouldn't be able to do these things. Now, there are restrictions for everything, and nothing should take precedent over the other, whether it is sports or music or theater or anything else like that, or any other extracurricular. So I'd like to reassure our community that that's what we're trying to do. We want to make sure that there are people where theater, where concerts are more important to them than any sport, and vice versa. And they should all have that equal opportunity in that regard.
Agree, Marshall. Being judicious with how we're really applying restrictions is important because people are tiring of this. We all are. I get it. Even those of us who have been really safe. So we just need to be judicious with what we're saying is necessary and really stick to, the science of what we think is going to mitigate COVID and not go overboard with it.
Thank you, everyone, for those comments. Does anyone else have any additional comments or questions before we vote? No? Katie, can we do a roll call vote? Thank you.
Yes. Mr. Antonio,
Yes.
Mr. Badger,
Yes.
Mr. Bleefeld,
Yes.
Ms. Kiavachi,
Yes.
Mr. Frank,
Yes.
Mrs. Heyman,
Yes.
Ms. Karianakis,
Yes.
Dr. Morris,
Yes.
Mrs. Ginsburg.
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
Thank you. All right, so the motion passes. Next, we will move on to the Assistant Superintendent report. Dr. Juan?
Good evening. Thank you. At the, I have one informational item this evening. At the board meeting in November, there was some discussion about piloting a live streaming model where teachers would turn on their laptop cameras for students who are quarantining to tune in to live instruction. So we reached out to a group of teachers and we had 3 teachers volunteer to try out the pilot model. If a teacher didn't currently have a student in quarantine, then they set up a mock experience where a few students went to a different location in the school and logged into Teams from that location to experience that live streaming model. So the students and teachers who participated in the program, in this, this pilot, the structure of it was simply the teacher turning on the laptop and positioning the laptop toward the direction of instruction, as we had discussed at that board meeting in November. And so students share their feedback. They joined virtually, and many of them had difficulty focusing. They shared that they had difficulty focusing and paying attention to the lesson. One student mentioned that it was helpful to have the math book with them so that they could try as best as they could to follow along. The other feedback from students was that it was hard to hear the lesson virtually. One student shared that when they returned to the classroom, they actually had more questions about the lesson from that virtual, from experiencing that virtual model. Teacher feedback was, similar to what students experienced in that virtual students were distracting to students in the classroom. So they're going back to that issue around focus and distractibility. When they moved around the room, of course, away from the computer, the sound became faint. So students who were tuning in virtually had a difficult time hearing anything that was going on in the classroom at that time. And of course, in the model, as we discussed, it was just turning on the laptop camera. And so there was no interaction between the students and the teacher. And so the virtual students were not able to participate in the lesson. And so that was the feedback. Our recommendation remains as it had been. We're very fortunate that our number of students who quarantine continues to remain low thanks to our mitigation efforts and the fact that all students in grades K-12 are now eligible for the vaccination. We have that modified quarantine program option that has been discussed here, the Test to Stay program that provides students the opportunity to attend school during that quarantine period by testing. So our recommendation is to continue with the current supports that we have in place, with asynchronous schoolwork being provided and technology devices being sent home, assignments and resources being posted online, and making sure that our teachers are focusing on essential content only and being flexible with deadlines for work submission for students who are out when they need to be out for quarantine. And of course, we know the contact with the teachers and counselors offering to meet with the student virtually for checking in and identifying additional support opportunities during that quarantine period, such as after school programs and the ELT opportunities for students to get direct support from teachers regarding their academics. That's all I have for this evening. I'll take any questions, and I don't have any action items at this time.
Dr. Dewan, I do have several questions just in follow-up. I may have missed it. How many students were involved in the pilot program?
There were a couple in each class. We had 3 teachers volunteer. So I want to say 2 to 3 in each of those 3 classes.
And did we take how did you gather the information? Did you submit written questions to each child, or just randomly? How did it work?
I asked the teachers to engage in the conversation with their students following that pilot experience. And the questions were to share, what worked well, what was challenging, and what ideas might you have for, moving forward. The feedback is that which I've shared, though. So there was not feedback specifically categorizing.
Do we have any written feedback from any of the children or the teachers?
The quotes that I shared this evening were also sent to the board in a memo. So those specific quotes were quotes that were collected from the 3 teachers as they engaged in those conversations with the students. The teachers then wrote down direct quotes from students, which were sent to the board in a memo.
So, which I saw. Did the students actually write down answers to specific questions about what they liked or disliked about the pilot program?
The mode of collecting the student quotes, I am unaware of. I'm not certain whether the students wrote their feedback to teachers or if the mode was oral dialogue.
And were any of the students asked whether I know there were different questions about feedback. Did any of the students say whether they, given the option of having it or not, the camera or not, that they decided one way or the other whether they would have liked it or not?
I do not believe they were asked that explicit question of whether or not they would prefer to have the camera on or have the camera off.
For one, I'm still hearing from families who are unhappy about the disengagement they get when they're in quarantine. Is there a way to find out definitively? Because if the recommendation is it doesn't work, look, if you do the program and find that it's not appropriate or worthwhile, then I think that's fine. I think just to make sure that we try and engage everybody as best as possible, is it possible to ask those students involved whether they found it helpful at all, or whether they would have preferred yes or no with that?
Okay.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments for Dr. Jawan?
Just one. Thanks for this pilot. What grades were these in?
Thank you. Great question. We had 2 elementary classes and 1 high school class.
Oh, okay. Huh. That must have been interesting. Thank you for conducting the pilot. No way that this was going to be easy, right? Thanks.
Any other questions or comments?
So I was under the impression it was actually just for like middle school, high school students, because I don't see at the elementary level that you're missing a ton of like really important, not to diminish elementary school, it's very important, but like work that's stressful about college admissions or whatever. So have we asked our middle school and high school quarantine kids if this is something that they want?
That's something that we can certainly ask. And I think back to the previous question about, did the students who were engaged in this model get asked that specific question? And they had not. So we can go back to the students who were participating in this model to ask them that question. To ask students broadly, every student who has not experienced it, I think might be challenging because they don't know what the model is, and they might have assumptions about what the model might be. So I will go back to those 3 teachers and I'll ask them to ask those students explicitly if they would prefer the model or not.
It might be a moot point because if you look at our trends, our middle school and high schools are not quarantining at the highest rate. Like it's really the elementary school kids that are. Yeah.
And remember, that's exactly right. And why that is because the older students had to date been vaccinated. So a vaccinated student is not quarantined. Well, now that might change now that more younger students are vaccinated.
Right. And then we have the vaccination option, and then we also have test to stay option. So in theory, very few children would be mandated to quarantine, would have to quarantine in that case. Yeah. Okay.
Dr. Dewan, I just had a question. What grades in elementary participated?
I I believe 4th and 5th grade. There were upper elementary classes for sure.
And the students in elementary, they were in the school at that time. They were not in actual quarantine. They're just another room.
There was one student who was actually in quarantine, like home. The other students were having that mock experience.
And for the student that was at home, did we talk to the student's parents at all to find out what their thoughts were on having that additional information available for their child?
I believe, as I recall, and I did not speak directly with the parent, but I believe the teacher said that the parent was actually very excited to have the camera on.
Okay, thank you. All right, any other questions or comments for Dr. Jawan? No? Okay, thank you so much. All right, we'll move on then to our board solicitor report. Jeff?
I have no report.
All right, thanks, Jeff.
You're welcome.
Then we'll move on to our board secretary report. Wade?
Thank you. There's no changes from the work session, so I'm requesting approval of action items 10B1 through 3.
So moved.
Second. So we have the motion's been made and seconded. Do we have any comments or questions for Wade? No? Okay, then all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, thank you. Motion passes. Wade, if we could move on then to the board treasurer report.
Thank you very much. There is no change from the work session, so I'm requesting approval of action item 11B1.
So moved.
Second.
All right, the motion's been made and second. Any comments or questions from the board? All right, then all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, the motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Wade. All right, moving on to the Director of Human Resources report, Danielle.
Hi, good evening. For tonight's HR report, there are no informational items. Changes from the work session last week are in bold on the agenda for your review. This evening, I am seeking a motion for approval for action items 12B1 through 12B4.
Thank you, Danielle. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. The motion's been made and there's been a second. Are there any comments or questions for Danielle?
I just want to say thank you to Danielle because in this approval is my children's new second grade teacher. Thank you so much.
Any other comments or questions? No? All right, then all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, the motion passes. Thank you. Thank you, Danielle. All right, then we'll move on to our communications committee report. Zeffie?
Thanks, Amy. Katie, can we project our weekly numbers? Thank you. So here we have our on-campus, in-person positive COVID-19 cases. As a note, these are folks that are in person in that period of time. And you can see our total numbers 23. And just as a note, you know, that's just going up a little bit, just so you know. Next slide. Off campus, these are our positive COVID-19 cases for student or staff who are not on campus. And this week's total was 5. Sorry for that. Our next slide looks at our quarantine isolation students. And this is just our students by building. And you can see that the total number that are in quarantine or isolation as of December 10th is 54. So this is a little bit of a rise from last week. And our percentage has also gone up. Last week we were, I believe, 0.99. So we're now at 1.09. So a small increase there. And then our next slide is our quarantine isolations for our staff. We have a total of 2, and that's a 0.28. Any questions? I know I ran through that a little quickly. Okay. I do have two more informational items. One is our board meeting location. That's been something that's come up a couple of times. Katie and her team has done some investigation around this. The short story is that we don't have the proper equipment in our auditorium to support a both live and synchronous kind of Zooming or of transmission of the information at the same time. So that's limiting us from a kind of capacity perspective. As you can see from the room here, we're not having a capacity issue, but perhaps come January 24th, we can maybe change our arrangement. Katie, I don't know if there was anything else that you wanted to point out. I know you sent me like 6 paragraphs and I said it in 2 sentences.
I think you summarized it perfectly. Thank you.
One of the things that we are doing is fixing these mics. We'll be voting on that momentarily. So that will help with some of the audio issues that we're having. So hopefully that will help with the issues. One last, yes.
Can I ask a quick question?
Of course, Marshall.
With regard to the auditorium, obviously at the moment it's not an imminent need, but regarding our discussion regarding plays, shows, things like that, maybe it's something to look into in the future where we could broadcast the shows so those who are either uncomfortable or incapable of going to the shows might be able to do that. I don't know if we do it now or not.
So sorry, go ahead.
Thanks. I was just gonna say, yes, we can go one-way communication without any problem.
Live? Can we do it live?
We could, yes. The constriction for the purpose of this conversation is the interaction, right? With the Zoom.
Right. I was just thinking if you were discussing technology and whatever it may be, if we could do that, it might be a wonderful way to have, have as many people as possible see the show live.
Yeah, so the vocal, sorry.
I apologize. I was just going to jump in. We'd also just have to check licensing. So if you're running a play and because I think we may have looked at this before, we'll take a peek at it. I hope we get good news.
And then I know my daughter just recently did a recital at the high school and they were going to not broadcast it live, but post parts of it on YouTube. So I know there's other avenues that they're using. But I love if we could kind of explore a live streaming possibility for those who might want to live stream. And then I know we've been bombarded with emails, but there was an email that is going around from Kristen Rowlings. I'm saying that wrong, but we're trying to get a communications meeting early in January with the #1 agenda being our website, because that's been something that we've been trying to work through. So please take a peek at that. And please, if you can, provide your availabilities to her so that Katie and team can get that on the books. And then lastly, I asked for a motion to approve action item 13B1, which is the updated microphones that we've been trying to get a handle on.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions?
Okay, then all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, the motion passes. Thank you so much, Steffi.
Thank you.
All right, moving on. Next is our Curriculum and Technology Committee report. Ronnie?
Okay, we have informational items. Dr. Dewan, are we going to go through the whole high school program of studies? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. I won't go through the entire program of studies. Each year in December, we share updates about the high school program of studies with the board. And in January, our students will begin their course selection process for the next school year. And the program of studies guides that process. So changes that are being made are outlined in document 14-1A for this informational item this evening, which include updates to our dual enrollment opportunities, updates with the North Monco Technical Career Center program, and an update to one of our family and consumer sciences courses. Lastly, there is an update to the high school program for career pathways, which will include shifting the graduation project to start in grade 11 from starting in grade 11 to starting in grade 9. So the 2022-23 program of studies is available on the Hicken High School scheduling and grade reporting office webpage on the district website. Shall I move on with the action items, Heyman? Okay. We have 5 action items that we'll be seeking approval this evening. Item 14B1 is bold because we originally included 4 hours of paid planning time for teachers who will be facilitating that after school program. However, we're increasing that to 12 hours, which will provide 1 hour per week of paid teacher planning time for the 12-week program. There have been no changes to the remaining items, so we are seeking approval of action items 14B1 through 14B5.
So move.
Second.
So there's been a motion, it's been seconded. Are there any comments or questions?
I'm sorry, can you explain that a little bit to me, the change that was made to 14.1?
Yes, the after-school reading program, the one change that was made is to the overall cost of that program. So originally, we had put in that proposal for teachers to have 4 total hours of teacher planning time for the 12-week program. And we're changing that to 12 total hours of teacher planning time so that teachers who will be instructing in the after-school program will have 1 hour per week for planning time for the after-school program.
I see. Okay. Thank you for explaining that.
Thank you.
And the teachers that we'll be utilizing, are they with regular teachers or?
We're working really hard to get with regular teachers to be teachers in this after-school program. So we certainly are, reaching out and tapping teachers on the shoulder and seeing if there's interest. And in many cases, they are Hicken School District employees, teachers who have expressed interest in the opportunity. There may be some cases where we have building substitutes who might be teaching, but they would be people who have been in the school and working with our teachers and will be guided by the principal and their teacher colleagues in terms of the planning for that program. So we know that they'll be offering high quality instruction for our students in that after school program.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? No? Okay, then all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Great, the motion passes. Thank you. Then we'll move on to the Facilities and Transportation Committee report. Wade, would you mind handling this?
Thank you very much. There is no change from the work session, so we're requesting approval of action items 15B1 through 7.
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there any questions or comments for Wade?
I have a question, Wade. For the 4th item for the turf fields, is this for just the planning process or the entire project?
Thank you. So it is for the engineering, which is the design of the project. The overall project budget is approximately $5 million, and that won't be approved until the project is developed to bid, and then it would be presented to the board. So this is a small fraction of that money.
Thank you.
Wade, I had a question actually about number 7. Assuming this is approved, what kind of time frame are we looking at for Breslin and Newey to come up with site plans for us to consider?
So we've already actually seen a draft of some ideas he's had. This is Mr. Breslin, and before the Stony Creek program tomorrow, he and I and Jerry are going to be at Bluebell. So I'm hopeful that it'll be on the short term. I didn't actually ask him, but I would imagine it's probably in a one month time frame, maybe.
Great, thank you so much. Any other comments or questions? Okay, then all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Great, thank you so much, Wade.
Thank you.
All right, then going on to our Finance Committee report, David.
Thank you, Amy. There are no informational items from the Finance Committee, and let's see, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8 action items that we'll be asking for approval. I see that item number 2, financial and compliance report for the year ending June 30th, 2021. Wade, that's in bold. Are there changes, or is this the final draft?
It's actually, yes, it's the final draft, but at the audit committee meeting, we handed out a sheet, which was the commitment of fund balance. And that sheet is now in the final draft. So that's the change, even though it was discussed at the meeting.
Okay, great. So we'll be asking for approval of those 8 action items per document 16.1 through 16-7.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Are there any questions or comments? All right, then all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Great, the motion passes. The motion's passed. Thank you. All right, then moving on to our policy committee report. Marshall?
Thank you. We have no informational items tonight, and nothing has changed since the last meeting. And so therefore, I am looking for a motion to approve action items B1 through 24 regarding our policy additions, subtractions, and changes.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there any comments or questions? No? All right, then all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Right, motion passes. Thank you. And we'll move on to the Racial Equity Oversight Committee. Paul?
Thank you, Amy. We have no action items and no informational items this evening. I would like to just add a reminder that we do have our next committee meeting, which will be next Monday, the 20th at 7 p.m. It will be on Zoom.
Thank you, Paul. Are there any questions or comments for Paul? No? All right, well, again, thank you so much. And now we'll go to our report of board representatives. We don't currently have anyone for extracurriculars, so we'll continue on. I don't have a new report for MCI Board of Directors. I don't think we have anyone as an MCIU Legislative Committee representative right now either. So we'll jump down to Ronnie. Anything for North Monco?
I'd like to remind everybody to pick up their meals as we're getting closer to the holiday dinners.
Thank you. And David, do you have anything to add to that?
I'm sorry, I don't. No, thanks.
Thank you so much. All right, then Zeppi?
Nothing to add.
Nothing, okay. All right, then we will go to our second public comment period. And again, I'll remind everyone, please, you must wear your mask at the podium, covering both your mouth and your nose, and you'll have 3 minutes to comment. And again, because of the comments we may have, we will allow 30 minutes. I don't even think we will have 30 minutes of comments, but right now we have one registered speaker with no name.
Carmina Taylor.
Oh, Carmina. Okay, come on up, Carmina.
So I have 5 topics, but I won't take 15 minutes. The first one is December 7th, 2020. There was a special education external audit done here, and that external auditor gave you guys 7 recommendations. And I haven't heard anything in the year what the school district has done by the 7 recommendations. So that's my question. Amy, what does it say for the second topic?
Code of conduct.
Right. So when Dr. Dewan and Paul talked about the code of conduct survey, the micro study, one of the things that it said, I think Dr. Dewan said or read somewhere that it was
to engage with administrators. But I'm a paid educational advocate for special ed kids and kids with discipline problems in the middle school. And I think it would be good to ask the parents of the ones that get detentions and suspensions about the impact of the policy and the code of conduct, and if it's actually followed through. So it's good to talk to the administrators, but the reality in my experience is the administrators that are imposing these excessive detentions and suspensions. So if you ask them, they're going to say whatever they feel is right, but I think you need to ask the parents about the enforcement of the code of conduct. I also wanted to point out that the district had a 2018 policy on restorative practices. And I asked an assistant principal at the middle school about that with one of my cases. And it's just interesting now that you're doing the training for the admins and then the teachers in the spring. But my question is, what happened to the 2018 policy enforcement? Belonging survey question. I am a facilitator of a cultural proficiency race and equity program. We're doing a belonging survey in 8 school districts. I find it interesting that the district is now trying to do that. And so my question is, who made the decision? Where's the program coming out of? And how is it going to be communicated to the families? In January 2020, and I'm jumping into another topic. January 2020, I sent an email to the superintendent as the president of the Ambler Branch NAACP after I made a right to know request on the discipline data. One of the things that stood out to me was that white male students in high school since 2015 have increased their rate of violence incidents than when. Yeah, so I asked in 2020, so the numbers from 15 to 20 increased 4 times for white male students. So when I listened to Katie Wenger at the last board meeting, she talked about
Carmina, we have reached our 3-minute mark. So if you'd like, you could certainly add additional comments in an email to the board members.
Okay, so please indulge me with one last thing then, because I mean, it's 5 separate topics and it's important. The last
speaker does get 3 minutes. So please, I would ask that you please just email the board members any additional comments that you do have. Thank you so much. Katie, is there anyone registered online?
We have a few registered online. First up is Kara Finn.
Thank you. Kara, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi all, Kara Finn, Lower Gwinnett. I just want to thank you very much for voting in the proposed health and safety plan. As was mentioned earlier, it is not fair that these sort of decisions be put on the school district. All a district and a board can do is follow the recommendations of public health experts, and that's exactly what you did. In addition, with COVID numbers currently skyrocketing locally and throughout the state, I cringe to think of how many children would end up in quarantine if we went to masks optional during a time of such high transmission, which is something that I didn't see anyone opposed to health and safety plan addressed or seemed concerned about. I am hopeful that Montgomery County will turn around and we will reach a low enough transmission level before the school year is out that masks do become optional. I know that would be a relief to everyone. Just thank you for keeping the maximum number of children in school and following expert guidance to keep students, staff, and their families safe. That's all I have.
Thank you, Kara. Katie, who's the next registered speaker?
Katie Wenger.
Katie, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
My name is Katie Wenger and I reside in Whitpain Township. First, I need to state that what happened here tonight with another 9-0 vote to keep our children masked is a disgrace. Once again, you are not representing half of the parents and families in this district. You are leaving no choice but for the parents to address this restriction on our children legally. You are harming our children. They are uncomfortable, disconnected, their breathing is restricted, and they are falling behind academically. The mask breaks and taking the kids outside is not happening. Please go to the schools and see for yourself. The other separate but connected issue is the violence in our schools. The division between our students and community seems to be worsening still. I spoke last week and you did not respond to my request for the data going back 3 years through the current time on physical altercations and threats in our schools. I'm asking again for these statistics to be posted in the Q&A. I'm also asking for you to form a committee of parents, students, teachers, and administration to make an immediate plan to keep our children safe. Ignoring this will not make it go away. Also, the school board and Dr. Crisfield need to go into the schools. Dr. Crisfield, when there is a fight, an attack on a student or teacher, or a threat, you should be there. The negligence is visible. Do not wait until something horrific happens here to our children, teachers, or staff. I'm astounded and very concerned that this is not a priority. Address the division. It is your job and your responsibility. We can only do so much at home, and then we send them into this hostile environment. That's all I have.
Thank you for your comments. Do we have any other registered speakers?
Carrie?
Carrie, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
My name's Carrie Coleman. I'm from Whitpain Township. I'm frankly stunned. One gentleman showed you how absurd these policies are in relation to the risk to children, and you did not address it. One gentleman asked for moderation. You did not seek moderation. You guys heard these heartfelt speeches and you didn't even respond. Charlotte tells you how it feels to wear a mask every day for over a year at school. And you have the nerve to say to her, good job. But you don't respect her enough to address a single thing she mentioned. Is this what you want to tell young women? Be brave, speak your mind, seek change. And then the people in power are going to ignore you and move along and do what they wanted to do anyway. What do you have to say to all the kids who feel awful while wearing a mask? What do you have to say to the kids who miss their friends' smiles? Are you willing to accept exemptions? You're right, she was brave. Now you be brave and have the backbone to address her concerns on camera. It's well within your capacity to move to mask optional. You guys are choosing this, not the county. There are so many more students than just the one you heard from tonight who are looking to you to protect them from a harmful mitigation from a virus which poses them virtually no harm. And you are completely ignoring them. That's all I have.
Thank you for your comments. All right, we have another in-person speaker registered, Stacy Twitt.
Thank you. Good evening. I am Stacy DeWitt. I am in Bluebell. First of all, I've been listening to all of these parents speaking and talking about how their kids can't breathe. I have a fourth grader. He is on the autistic spectrum. I have a sixth grader, neurotypical. My fourth grader has absolutely no problem with a mask. He looks at it as his way to help his community. He looks at it as his way to make sure his friends don't get sick and that his friends' parents don't get sick and his friends' grandparents don't get sick. I understand that we talk about kids getting very rarely sick from this disease. And that may be true in the short run, but we do not know what the long-term effects of COVID are going to be on these children. And even if they turn out fine, these kids are losing parents and grandparents and loved ones and community members every single day. So thank you for standing up for our health and our safety. We need to set an example to our children that sometimes there are things we don't want to have to do, but we do it for our community. And if my fourth grader can understand this and preach it to his family and his friends, we can all stand for that a little bit longer. And by the way, I also want to throw my masks in a bonfire. So when this is all over, I will host that happily. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stacy. Katie, do we have anyone else with their hands raised online?
Yes, we have a few more. So Jen R is next.
Jen R, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, it's Jen Rappaport. I'm calling from Lower Gwynedd. I was given a call in really just about the temper within the school, kind of school violence type things, the amount of fights going on, verbal things going on, online things going on. I wanted to see what the school's doing to address that. I know there's a lot of frustration in the school, probably because children are in masks all day. I mean, if I was in a mask all day for 7 hours with the teacher telling me to put it up, I'd probably be frustrated too. But I just want to know in general, are they beefing up security at the school? Do we have online security? And what else, if you could post online some answers, what else is going to be done to keep them safe? And also to keep us in the loop too when something does go wrong, so we don't find out, you know, from someone else or secondhand, something like that. And then as far as the mask decision, again, very disgusting. Everybody practically that called in and came in person tonight was really giving you some legitimate information. PA Supreme Court says it's okay. I think they're a little above you. So we are going to court and we will be going to sue the school district and the board members individually. So that's all I had to say.
Thank you, Jen. Katie, who else is registered?
Ellie Krasnowski.
Ellie, you can go ahead and unmute.
Hi, my name is Ellie Krasnowski, and I am a 12th grader at Hicken High School, and I am highly involved in the musical department. I participate in the normal choir, the select choirs like Chambers and Camerata, and I do the musical and the play, and I just wanted to talk about how the musical department is feeling during this hard time. Currently, I had a Camerata rehearsal tonight, and it's very difficult. And we have very strict restrictions with our distancing, which is totally fine because we do want to be safe. But when we look at our restrictions compared to that of sports, when there are some athletes who are maskless, breathing on each other, touching each other, and that is acceptable. But for us singers, we have to be a certain amount apart with masks on. And it is very hard because we have morning rehearsals and everybody in our choir cannot fit into the room. And that forces us to have to hum because we cannot find a place in the morning that is big enough to hold all of us. And then going a little further into the touching, the musical is coming up soon. And with the play, we weren't allowed to touch each other. And if we can't touch each other in the musical, that totally limits our dancing and totally changes the whole entire experience. And of course, we want to be safe with our restrictions and we totally understand safety. But if what the athletes are doing are safe, then I think our guidelines are a little harsh on us because we have been extra safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellie. Katie, who else has their hand raised?
Next up is Jen.
Jen, you can go ahead and unmute.
Hello, this is Jen Dovin from Whitpain Township. Kind of piggybacking off of what I believe it was Stacy called in. I too have a special needs child who loathes his mask. The only reason that he complies at school, which is the only place that he has to wear it, is because he's scared he's going to get in trouble. That's the only reason. He hates it. I have another child that hates it as well. The only reason they comply is because they're scared they're going to get in trouble. It's sad. It's sad for children to fear something that isn't even a mandate, isn't even a law. One. The other thing is I want to know if there's going to be a survey sent out or the date of when we need to decide. I believe that we are able to pick again if we're going to choose in person for the second half of the year or online learning. Over the last 5 years, I'm also curious to know how many medical and religious exemptions were approved and how many were denied for standard vaccinations for anybody entering the school district. I also would like to know over the past 21 months, how many medical and religious exemptions were approved and how many were denied for mask exemptions. I have the feeling there's a very, very, very large difference there. And I'm very curious to know why mask exemptions are not being allowed. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Jen. Katie, who is the next person to have their hand raised?
The next one is Amanda.
Amanda, you can go ahead and unmute.
I'm receiving a message that says Amanda doesn't have permission to talk because she's using an older version of Zoom.
Is she able to call in through Zoom?
She'll need to disconnect from Zoom and then restart it to connect again.
Okay, can we move to the next person?
That's our last person on Zoom.
Okay.
I'm sorry. There's one more that just popped in.
Okay.
Christina Thomas is next.
Okay, Christina, go ahead and unmute.
Hi, my name is Christina Thomas. I'm from Lower Gwinnett Township. I have a daughter in high school, and I just wanted to call in and thank you for everything you're doing with the health and safety plan. I am currently one of those parents that had a child bring COVID home to me, and I am now recovering. I've had an antibody infusion to try to keep me out of the hospital. I've seen very sick people while I was in there. This is not a joke. And my fear is that if we take these masks off, these kids are going to get sick by the dozens. So I appreciate everything you're doing. My high schooler needs to be in school. And if a mask is going to keep her in there, as far as I'm concerned, her education and mental health are more important than just putting it. It's the most important thing for me. I just wish that as a community, we could come together and understand that it's not just about the kids, it's about the family members at home. Because I work from home, I don't leave my house. The only way to get it was brought into the house. And that's all I wanted to say. I just wanted to thank you again for making the best decision for the kids.
Thank you for your comments. Katie, is there anyone else?
There are no other speakers on Zoom.
And no one was able to call in either.
I don't see that Amanda's reconnected at this time.
Okay, thank you. All right, well then we'll go to board member comments or questions. Any board members have any comments this evening?
I just have a couple comments. I just wanted to say that COVID-19 cases among children are not negligible, and they're on the rise again. And just last week, there were over 24% more COVID cases in kids than there had been the week before. And the numbers just continue to rise. 164,000 cases among children, and that's more than 31,000 new cases than the week before. I just want to say that wearing a mask is actually something that will help mitigate the transmission of COVID. That's all.
Thank you, Rosetta. Any other board members have any comments?
Just in response to the speaker, Ellie, who was the choir member, is there a way we can get them in a room with 12 HEPA filters and just let them sing? I don't know, is there a way we can get them to a place where they can practice normally? Because I do hear what she's saying with athletes, and I guess probably the thinking is athlete contact is transient, where they're moving in and out, and singer, you're singing in the same spot. But is there a way we can accommodate her and her choir?
We can definitely look into it. I'm not sure about the dozen HEPA filters in one place, but a bigger space, yes. And I think we can come up with some ideas.
And I mean, wrestling is happening, right? I mean, that's not transient at all. I mean, have you seen water polo? Not transient at all.
Chlorine kills it.
I don't know. I don't believe. I'm I too have this kind of pain for the arts. Some of these students, that is their sport. And it's not fair. It really is not fair. Like, especially when you see like all the sports are fully on. We need to get the musical on. We really do. Thanks.
Could we do assurance testing with some of the, I know you said there's not a lot of tests available, but that could be a way to, another layer of protection for the arts.
Yes, that's a possibility.
Any other board member comments? Jim, I did have 2 questions myself. One, do we have any idea yet when we'll be allowing volunteers back into the school to help our teachers with, for example, kid writing in kindergarten or helping with reading with our students?
That is something that we've had conversations about as an administrative team and looking ahead for the second semester, having an increase in volunteers available in the schools. It probably won't look like it has looked in past years. It will still be reduced, but it will be more than it was this fall.
Okay, well, that's great. And what about, one of our speakers did ask about the date for the second semester decision. When will we be making that choice?
We'll be sending a correspondence out tomorrow to all families to make them aware of the steps they need to take if they're interested in switching either from virtual to in-person or in-person to virtual. So we'll have information out to families tomorrow.
A key, and that's exactly right. A key will be, you don't have to respond if you don't want to change. Only if you want to switch will you be, you can contact your principal and they'll take care of it.
Great, thank you. And just one last question. We did hear a couple of speakers bring up safety issues. And in January, you will be giving us some more information about our protocols and procedures when we do have threats made to our district. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks so much, Jim. All right, any other board member comments? All right, well then can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, motion passes. Good evening, everyone.